Tonight on Let It Rip, former President Trump told to hush in his hush money trial, or else. That's what a judge is trying to do.
This gag order is not only unique, it's totally unconstitutional.
The judge is threatening to throw him in jail. The former president seemingly calling his bluff. A former U.S. attorney weighs in on how common these orders actually are and a debate about how this case will impact the election. But first tonight, pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses getting more intense. Commencement ceremonies interrupted as police try to break up these encampments as Congress takes up a bill expanding the definition of anti-Semitism. Our panel takes on the line between free speech and hate speech. I'm Root Barrage. This is Let It Rip. And so time now to Let It Rip with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and State Representative Abraham Aiyash. Fox 2 anchor and attorney Charlie Langton with us as always. And with that, let's let it rip and talk about this. All right, these protests going on all across the country started in New York, and in response to some of the pushback that these New York protesters were getting, other ones popped up, including in Ann Arbor. That's an area that Debbie Dingell represents. But I'm going to start with you, Representative Aiyash. The goal here, the ask here, divest from Israel, take away some of these academic relationships and some of these monetary relationships with Israel. It has been proven in the past that those sanctions, those boycotts do not work necessarily, don't really make a dent. Is it worth it? And is that the way to do this?
Look, we have seen all across this country young people standing on the right side of history. You go back to Vietnam, the South Africa apartheid, the 2003 Iraq war. Time and time again, young people have been the moral conscience of our country. And this is no different in this case, where we have seen over 30,000 people, most of them innocent women and children that have been murdered, hostages included in that death toll. These young folks are saying we are demanding that our universities are going to be leaders, and we're not going to allow this moral unconscious behavior where we have seen the death and the carnage, and our universities should not be complicit in aiding and abetting any type of genocide or apartheid. And if that means divesting from companies that have interest in a government or interest in a country that is enabling those types of things, then the universities should heed the call of those students.
Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, by investing in Israeli companies and academic institutions in Israel, are you really supporting the war efforts from Benjamin Netanyahu?
You know, I'm going to take this from a much different perspective.
But Congressman, would you mind? Would you think that you are, though? Well, are you kind of funding the war if you're investing in universities and in companies?
I don't think that it's that simple a question in any way, shape, or form. And I think that we need to be worried about what's happening in the Middle East. It is a tinderbox. We have people in this community on both sides that are afraid. They have lost families. Both sides, the Jewish community and the Arab American, the Palestinian, have lost families. This is a very emotional, difficult, challenging time, and those kinds of questions are just adding more kerosene to the fire. And we need, I think what's happening on college campuses is about freedom of speech. Every student, no matter whether you're Jewish, Arab American, Palestinian, feeling safe. We are looking at the rise of hatred in every community across this country, and we need to be standing up to hate wherever we see it. And your question to me is
let's rephrase the question then. Do you think this effort to divest from Israeli interests is the right way to protest what's going on right now?
I think that for the students, they're expressing their concern. The ones that are protesting, there are other students on the other side of this. I think that both sides of it can be argued. I don't believe in violence in any way. I think we have to protect freedom of speech right now in every way, shape, or form. But we also have to learn to treat each other with respect and civility and stand up to hatred wherever we see it. I'm very worried about what I'm witnessing, how students are feeling, period, of not being safe, either side.
Charlie, are you concerned with what you're seeing on both sides? We're talking about anti-Muslim and anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish emotions. Are you worried about that?
We just saw pictures over there of basically rioting. This isn't protesting, it's rioting. But here's the deal. When the President of the United States basically says we support Israel in any way, shape, or form, why would you say something like that? Because there are differences. There are maybe Israel is going too far. Maybe we are seeing that, and I don't like that. Now,
here are the facts, Charlie.
I agree with that, but I agree with you on this one.
Rafah, that we were told that was the red line. Palestinians were told at the beginning of this conflict to go south. They went south. We were told that Gaza City was the epicenter of where Hamas was, and now you see the Israeli officials suggesting that it's actually Rafah that is the core of Hamas. So the question becomes this: we have seen almost a year now of fighting and death and destruction. Every single university in Gaza has been decimated. So the question has to be, at what point will our leaders lead with that moral consciousness and say that the killing of innocent men, women, and children is unacceptable? And if our universities are aiding and abetting that, as a student, that is the appropriate way to defend.
But will you not vote for Biden?
So
that's the key here.
This is not about an election. Right now, we have to have a conversation about, we have college students on campuses right now being maimed. We have college students on campuses being attacked and harassed.
Do you support that?
We have college students.
Do you support the tactics that some of the protesters are using?
So we'll talk about some of those tactics. In UCLA, we had pro-Israel protesters literally unleash bear spray on protesters. We had someone who jokingly said, unacceptable, but jokingly said on campus, kill the Jews. And what did the police do? Instead of arresting the guy that actually said it, they targeted a Palestinian protester. So here are the facts. I have been to 3 different college campuses across 2 different states during the start of these encampments. And what I will tell you is that I am seeing Jewish students at the forefront fighting for peace. We have Jewish students at the forefront saying we need to see our universities divest from Israeli companies. We need to see our universities break down. And the thing is, we have seen this happen before. People are forgetting. When we talked about what Russia was doing during the Ukraine conflict, universities divested from Russian-based companies. So the suggestion that somehow this is a difficult or an awkward thing to try to figure out is just simply, to use the president's term, malarkey. And it's hypocrisy. Because if we can say divesting in apartheid South Africa and divesting in a Russian regime that has resulted in the destruction of Ukraine, then why are we going to equivocate or pause when we talk about divesting from a government in a country that has resulted in the death of nearly 40,000 people in this time span, including the hostages?
And that's what I was getting to at the beginning when I asked you that question. I know meant to put kerosene on anything. We're looking to really get some answers here for people who don't understand this issue. And in this case, divesting from these interests may be something that is an attainable goal. Has it happened before? You're saying yes. What about what we're seeing now from this president? 3,500 bombs put on hold to keep those weapons from moving into Rafah if an attack in Rafah was to happen. Is this the right move from President Biden, do you think?
Any attempt to stop the killing of innocent men, women, and children is the right move always. It is sad to see that nearly 40,000 people have been murdered, but the fact of the matter is we can prevent more death and destruction. And Netanyahu and his right-wing extremist government is hell-bent on destroying every single Palestinian that they possibly can. They have shown it. We have seen mass grave after mass grave after mass grave at the Al-Shifa hospital. We have seen babies that have been beheaded. Everyone talked about beheaded babies way back in October, but no one wants to talk about it now. We have heard calls of little girls sitting in a car when she calls the Red Crescent and she says, I am alone. And they said, where are your family? And she said, they are around me and they're all dead. And then they sent an ambulance to try to go get her, and that ambulance was destroyed. So we have to finally start addressing this clearly. There is a huge bad actor in this instance. It is the Israeli government. It is Netanyahu. It is the IDF. They have killed and killed and killed, including hostages. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, if this is really about Hamas, how is it that after all of this death and destruction, that one of the most powerful militaries on the face of the earth has not defeated this organization?
All right, let's let the congresswoman in this as well. The 3,500 bombs put on hold right now. This president has made it clear and has pushed back against Netanyahu and has been praised for that in many circles as well. He's doing the right thing by telling Benjamin Netanyahu, hey, this is not just an unlimited war.
He drew the red line.
Yeah, he did.
But I think
he said, Congresswoman, he did say that it's not necessarily a red line. So we have to be honest about what the president is saying. He suggested it's a red line, and now he's starting.
But he's holding holding weapons back right now.
He is holding it because of the offense. Right? He has made it very clear that Israel should not go into Rafah. We are going to see, what people don't understand the geography is that the Gaza have moved, most of the people have moved into that center. We have destroyed 80% of the homes in the infrastructure. Not we, but
I mean we, yes, the United States.
Israel has.
Absolutely. I mean, they are U.S. bombs,
but
Congresswoman.
the number of people that, more than 30,000 people have been died, most of them are almost 14,000 children. We have to, we also, it is so complicated. We have to remember that anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are both on the rise. Hatred is on the rise. I believe there are foreign governments putting kerosene on the hatred that's happening in this country. And I think that people are hurting. And what I'm really worried about, it doesn't matter what you do. I feel like I live at a crossroads. I sit and listen to both communities. I talk to Abe. I talk to, not Abe, but I lived in Dearborn. I know how people are hurting.
What's the line here? How do you support both Israel and also support these Palestinian families who are devastated?
Terrorist groups, but not all Palestinians are terrorists. Yeah, and then the hatred that is happening.
The fact that even has to be said, Charlie, I have to respond. Yeah. The fact that statement has to be said, not all Palestinians are terrorists. Why is it every time we talk about Arabs, every time we talk about Palestinians, we always have to add some suffix to suggest that not all of us are bad. That gives the suggestion that there are some that are inherently terrible and there are some that are inherently bad. We can make the same argument about any community. So
we have militia that live in this community, and we don't do the same thing.
No, we can't. There is no militias living in this community, Congresswoman. I don't know what you're.
Yes, there are. There are a lot of white militia. Remember the Oklahoma bombing? Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
So the point here is we have to stop with this narrative that there are some good Palestinians and then there are some bad Palestinians. Any innocent man, woman, and child that is murdered, especially with U.S. tax-funded bombs, is unacceptable. And we have to stop setting qualifiers on brown lives all across the Middle East. We have seen time and time again that we are disposable, and that is no longer an acceptable thing, and that is precisely what the college students are protesting.
Well, Representative Aiyash, by no means did anyone on this program imply that. I believe that all people on both, we have victims, and like you mentioned, close to 40,000 victims on one side. Those are innocent people, babies, moms, and dads. Our hearts do go out to them, but we also got to figure out how to stop this Islamophobia. We also have to stop this anti-Semitism, something that we have to begin the conversation with, even when they're tough.
Can I say one thing?
We have to wrap.
I have to say one thing.
Please make it quick, sir.
I need to think about those 3 Palestinian college students that were shot for wearing a keffiyeh way back in the fall of last year.
It's horrific.
And when they were shot and killed, one of them is now immobile from the neck down. We did not see the level of outrage from our politicians federally around those 3 individuals, yet we are seeing this manufactured outrage over what's happening on college campuses because we have Jewish and non-Jewish students protesting for peace.
You made your point clear, and I want to say thank you for that, and I want to thank you for joining us here today. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell as well, thank you. We hope that this helped people understand a little bit more about what these issues are about that we're seeing on these college campuses. Before we go to break, Charlie is taking Let It Rip on the road.
You get a chance to ask any question you want to former President Trump or President Biden. What would it be?
How are you going to make this country safer?
My real question is what if they have ulterior motives?
What is their position on the Middle East conflict?
Biden, Trump, who would do a better job at making peace in the Middle East?
Well, I don't know if it's up to either one of them.
President Biden or former President Trump, what would you ask them about the war?
Why?
Which president would do a better job at bringing peace in Gaza?
I don't know.
Biden's been the president, and there hasn't been peace under his administration. And so I think Trump is the favorite because everybody's looking for a change.
I know one who cares about making peace in the Middle East and one who likes to make headlines and make good sound bites.
I don't need to guess, do I?
No, you don't need to guess.
Up next, a gag order against former President Trump in his hush money case. The judge fined him multiple times for violating it, even threatening him with jail time. But Trump is still talking. He says it's unconstitutional. So we're taking that question to a former U.S. attorney. That debate next. Back now on Let It Rip, debating the gag order against former President Trump in this hush money case. I'm joined now by a panel of legal all-stars. Former U.S. Attorney for Michigan's Eastern District, Matthew Schneider. Attorney Todd Flood, who led the probe against Governor Snyder during the Flint water crisis. Attorney and conservative advocate Terry Johnson. And our own anchor and attorney, Charlie Langton, is probably not spending a penny on television, the best-known attorney in Michigan.
These three are by a long shot.
But listen, I'll tell you what. Right now, there's a division between whether is this a political trial or is this a real legal trial of this hush money case against former President Donald Trump. Right. You talk to Donald Trump, he'll tell you this is a witch hunt and this is unconstitutional and that this is unprecedented. Matthew Schneider, when you hear those words, any of those even close to qualify for what we're seeing and what we're seeing happen right now?
Well, there's always going to be political angles in anything that's legal. People will make those accusations, and sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not. If you look at this case in New York right now, let's just compare that to the rest of the cases. Donald Trump has 4 cases against him. The strongest is probably the Mar-a-Lago documents case in Florida. That is probably the strongest case with the most powerful evidence and witnesses. The Georgia case and the interference in the election case, those are in the middle. There's very little doubt that this is the weakest case by far. I mean, there are problems with the witnesses. There are extreme problems with the evidence. I'm not saying that he won't be convicted, but this is a very weak case. And I think liberals and conservatives, they can agree on that. The prosecution to this point hasn't shown what they were supposed to show. This is a documents case. It's not about Stormy Daniels. It's not about this affair between the president. This is about a campaign finance violation. So far, the prosecution hasn't done a great job of demonstrating that.
Falsifying records to conceal a crime, talking about the money that was spent in the campaign versus the hush money checks that were then kind of forwarded to Stormy Daniels is the allegation here. Why wait for so long? 2016 is when all this stuff happened, and now we're adjudicating this today, right on the eve of the political season. What is this, Todd? I mean, can you see how people call this political?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of elephant birthing a mouse, so to speak, to me. You know, the case, no one's above the law. I get that. Threading the needle in this particular case seems to me, you know, it's a misdemeanor for these records that he kept, and now they're trying to hook a back door to make it a campaign finance charge to bring it up to an E felony. Regardless, it's costing millions and millions of dollars. The government there, the attorney represents the people of the state of New York. Would they rather save those millions and millions of dollars for President Trump to do potentially probation or pay a fine and be done? So everyone can look at this and see that obviously this is a overcharge in a lot of ways. It's political in a lot of ways. But when you watch it, it's real. And this judge is throwing the hammer down. And, you know, if you're the defendant and you're the defense attorneys, there's a lot of pressure there. So it's really real.
So, Terry, a little bit about what we're looking at in terms of the gag order piece of this. So let's talk, let's kind of ignore the hush money part of it for a second. Talk about this gag order. Violated, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, continuing to violate it. And then he's finally told, you can't talk anymore. You're going to violate this, I'm going to throw you in jail. Does this president think he's above the law? And is he using this as a campaign tool to rally his troops?
Well, here's the thing. Number one, this is where I disagree with the president. You know, there is a gag order, and I think, number one, the judge is in control. You may not like the judge, you may not like his rulings, but as a president, former president of the United States, you're supposed to follow the law. And in this case, if the judge says, don't talk about it, don't talk about it. What I think is going to happen, what I think Trump is pushing for, I really believe Trump wants to spend a night or two in jail, because I think that is really good for him politically at this point. And this judge, I don't think, wants to put him in jail for this, and I think that's where the battle is.
Is he then, if this is true, would he then be weaponizing the justice system as a campaign tool?
Well, I think he will be defending himself in the and taking advantage of the system, so to speak, in order to get something out of it.
Charlie, if someone tells someone in court 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times you can't talk and they talk, generally speaking, how many times does someone have to be told by a judge before they're thrown in jail?
1. Trump should be in jail. This judge has lost control of this case. I can't believe this is so frustrating to me. Throw the guy in jail. It's a simple order. I don't like the order, maybe. It's a freeze. I don't care. The judge made the order. You don't like the judge? You can appeal it. But you don't violate it. And he violated it. How many times did you say? 10?
7.
7,
yeah,
8, whatever. 1-time violation. Throw the guy in jail. And the reality is, he's going to take him to Rikers Island. They'll put him in there. The secret's he'll do 2 hours and he'll be out of there. That's the reality of it. Now do it again. He'll go for a day or 2. Listen, the judge has lost control of this case. This is a very weak case. If you're a Democrat and you really want to politicize Trump, don't try this case. Try some of these other cases that have some meat, that really mean something for the country. This is a very technical and defensible case. But the judge, Stormy Daniels, has nothing to do with records.
Right.
Zero.
Well, and that's the question that so many have about the kind of theater that we're seeing here, because this is about documents. This is about alleged fraud. And instead, what we're seeing the whole day in court this week was her talking about the most salacious details of the former president laying in bed in his boxers, in a sense, trying to humiliate him, or at least bring out these facts that don't matter in this case. Matthew, do the people understand that this is theater, or do you think that people say, hey, this is what we need to hear right now, legally?
The prosecution is doing this because they want to show the motivation. They're trying to say that this is why Trump is trying to cover this up, because of these salacious details. The fact of the matter is Stormy Daniels, her testimony could have been over in 2 minutes. Did you have a sexual relationship with the president? Yes or no? Did you have a non-disclosure agreement after that? Yes or no? Okay. Was that to affect the election? Was it a campaign finance violation?
Yeah.
That's really
By pushing the envelope, Todd, is there a chance, although they said no today, that this could go to mistrial because of the damning evidence that Stormy Daniels was trying to put out there?
No, it's not going to be a mistrial. This judge is not going to give that a mistrial. You kidding? You think he wants to do this twice? No, never. But at the end of the day, I agree with Matthew 1,000%. That was so prejudicial. How that got in, to the extent that it did, in its probative value, that's what you're weighing, right? You're weighing how the sex and the like, that had no place, really, because this is about entering records into a business document in a ledger saying, I paid this guy legal fees, right? That's it, to keep this down. And to me, it's nonsense.
So let's talk about what this does to this former president. Terry, you're a conservative, you're a Republican, you're seeing this kind of play out in real time here. What does this do to his base when they're watching this?
Well, it incentivizes the base to do, to rally behind him. It's red meat for us. It's like he's being done wrong. And if you hear Trump again and again, he says, if they do it to me, they'll do it to you. And the problem I have with this, not only the timing, but let's think about this. I just did a homicide case, took like 7 days, right? This case here documents 8 weeks, really? It doesn't need to go 8 weeks. As Todd said, it is a complete waste of resources. The Republicans are rallying behind this, and I'll say if the Democrats were smart, they would stop giving Trump all this free publicity on a daily basis.
All right, so Todd Flood, when you move forward with this particular case, what happens? How does this impact the election? More cases to come. This is one. We have more to come here. What happens?
Well, I actually think that none of the cases will go prior to the election. That's a given.
We've already seen the delays.
Yeah. So that you can put that away. This case actually, as Terry has said, is a platform. There are 33% of the right wing that are all in with Trump. This is a platform for them. I don't, and then the far left extreme, 33% over there. The middle, the people, the common Joe, the six-pack that is out there making decisions, what are they going to do with this? That's going to be the big question.
Matthew Schneider, I know that you care about the legalities of all of this, but from a voter's perspective here, people care about their pocketbook. They care about issues like abortion and the border. At the end of the day, does this tip the scales for anyone?
I don't think it does. And if you look at what voters are looking at, they really do look at what affects them. And Stormy Daniels does not affect them in any way. Even the Mar-a-Lago documents case, that's a little bit more close to, we don't like to violate the national security laws in the United States. But nevertheless, that doesn't affect most Americans, and they're just looking at different issues. I think Todd's exactly right.
Charlie, you talk to people every day on the streets. This doesn't hit them at home, does it?
Zero. Zero.
Right.
There are more ratings on the worst show on Fox 2 than this whole Trump thing. No one's really watching this thing. It's interesting, though, I'll give you that. And Stormy Daniels does owe Trump money, I think, right? About $500,000, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
So there's a whole bunch of little legal things that we like to talk about, but the general public, no.
Well, perhaps some of the merchandise that Stormy is selling can help with some of those fees, and we can say the same for former President Trump. We're going to come back for final thoughts.
Sure.
So please hold your thought there, Terry. We'll have that when we return. Final thoughts, Terry.
Let's get rid of all these trials. Let's get back to election and the issues that matter with the people.
Todd?
If my client, any one of my clients, did what Trump has done, they'd be in jail. So to the extent that he's, as Charlie has said, had 10 free passes, shocks me.
You got to follow gag order, Michael.
As a prosecutor, you got to pick your battles. As a prosecutor, the Mar-a-Lago case, documents case, it's very important to national security. It's a big deal. This case, it just doesn't rise to that level, and I think that's a problem.
Matthew Schneider, thank you so much. We thank you for your time today. Todd Flood, Terry as well. Charlie, thank you for joining us on this edition of Let It Rip.
The Let It Rip discussion continues online. Sound off on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, or fox2detroit.com.